Hi everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. In a recent video, I interviewed Caitlin Hawker. She just started up a new channel called Anticipating Christ's Return. I'll put a link for it in the description box below so you can subscribe to her. We were talking about this concept of the great and dreadful day of the Lord, because it seems like there's people that dread the second coming. They think it's going to be horrible. And we were talking about the fact that, yes, for the wicked, it's going to be dreadful, but for the righteous, it's going to be great. It's going to be the great day of the Lord. And there was a little bit of pushback on that, saying that, well, you know, it's going to be bad for everybody, at least in the lead up to the second coming, you know, so that's not really what that means. And so that made me want to do a study into this phrase, the great and dreadful day of the Lord, as well as a similar phrase, great and terrible. And I'll show you what I found. You'll have to excuse the lightning in the background. I don't know if you heard that. It's been kind of loud. Okay, so I'm going to show you what I found. Before I do, I just want to share this with you. I came across this recently. This is a quote from Boyd K. Packer at the time of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. And this was an address given at the Church Educational System Symposium, August 10th, 1993. The talk is called The Great Plan of Happiness. He says, "Our youth need to know how to mark the scriptures, and they need to have some kind of filing system." Look at that. Some kind of filing system. In addition to that, if you give each one of them a framework upon which the truths they discover at random can be organized into a personal testimony, you will have served them well. You guys, I'm telling you, it's important to do something like this. A spreadsheet works really good, at least it does for me, because as you can see, I can organize everything like this into rows. So this is under my row titled Personal Study. And I'm sure I'll find more quotes over time. You guys, we really need to study the scriptures. We really need to study the words of the prophets, and we need to organize it because we're not robots. We don't have perfect memories. So the Lord gave us the ability to record things, and that's what we should do. And you should have it in a way that you can easily find what you found for future reference. I actually just used it yesterday with my daughter. She was having like a hard time. And I was able to quickly go to something that was able to help her. So it's not all just second coming stuff. So anyway, this is one way you can do it, spreadsheets. But anyway, so I have on my quotes A through Z spreadsheet, currently on rows 105 and 106, I have great and dreadful day of the Lord, and then the phrase great and terrible. And they're similar. So this is how it went. Okay, I'm going to save the scriptures for last because I found something really interesting in 3rd Nephi chapter 8 when it comes to this phrase, great and terrible. So stay tuned for that. But what we're going to do is let's just work our way back in time. Let's start with the present and go back. And we'll see what prophets and apostles and general authorities have had to say about these phrases. We'll start with great and dreadful day of the Lord. Now, well, I should say this. I'm not going to read all these scriptures. These are basically just different variations of Malachi chapter 4, verses 5 through 6. But you know this. Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. Okay. And all these, they're found in the Book of Mormon, Doctrine and Covenants, and they're basically just different versions of that. Okay. So that's essentially, that's basically the main scripture that we're talking about when we talk about great and dreadful day of the Lord. So we'll start with Elder Christophel Golden Jr. of the 70. This is in the October 2021 General Conference, Preparing for the Second Coming of Christ. This was an amazing talk, by the way. You should read it. He said, "Now I quote for a moment from the church's gospel topics under the heading Second Coming of Jesus Christ." And now that's been renamed, I think, Gospel Topics and Questions, or Gospel Questions and Topics. I think it's Topics and Questions. Okay, but it says on the church website, "When the Savior comes again, he will come in power and glory to claim the earth as his kingdom. His second coming will mark the beginning of the millennium. The second coming will be a fearful, mournful time for the wicked, but it will be a day of peace for the righteous." Okay. Again, I'm not saying that there's not going to be problems leading up to the second coming. So, but I have a quote for that I actually came across as I was doing this. So I'll give you that in just a second. The next one is Elder Bruce R. McConkie of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. This is from Millennial Messiah, pages 505 to 508. And for this, I did a lot of skipping around because, there was a lot of stuff in between that wasn't necessarily related or as clear. So, okay, he says, "Is there no hope for anyone in the dreadful day? There is for those who are true and faithful in all things. For them, whether in life or in death, it'll be a time of glory and renown. Will they escape the outpouring of divine wrath and avoid the vengeance with which the wicked will be smitten? They will." Now, before you say it, and I'm going to be reading this in just a minute, yes, the righteous will hardly escape. And I think people, they really fixate on that because for some reason, I've noticed this tendency in this LDS Second Coming community to really just almost just desire tribulation and horrible things. And I don't know why that is. It's kind of weird, other people, they don't want it, but they're really, really fearful of it. And they shouldn't be, because generally speaking, the Lord is going to protect the righteous. And we might have to go through some crappy things. We already have. There's been judgments poured out ever since the dedication of the Salt Lake Temple. And that's what Wilford Woodruff said, that the angels were released at the dedication of the Salt Lake Temple. But there's been persecution and stuff this entire dispensation. And it'll probably get a little bit worse. But I don't think that we need to be fearful. We need to be righteous is what we need to be. Okay, anyway, so will they escape the outpouring of divine wrath and avoid the vengeance with which the wicked will be smitten? They will. They are the true Israel who yearn for the restoration of them of the ancient kingdom. They are the ones who shall abide the day and who shall live and reign on earth with their Lord for the space of 1,000 years. And blessed are they, for they shall inherit the earth. Isaiah and Joseph Smith now turn to a consideration of the love and mercy and goodness that shall be showered upon the faithful in Israel in the day of the Lord's return. It shall fall as the gentle rain. Now look at this imagery. It shall fall as the gentle rain from heaven upon those who know the Lord and believe his gospel and seek his face. Okay, skipping forward. For the wicked and ungodly, the second coming is a day of vengeance. For the saints of the Most High, it ushers in an era of righteousness and joy and peace. They are then redeemed and freed from all oppression. Let the wicked perish at the presence of God, saith the Scripture, but let the righteous be glad. Let them rejoice before God, yea, let them exceedingly rejoice. That's from Psalm 68, 2-3. Skipping a bit further, and this is at the end of that section of the book. How comforting it is to know that for the saints, the great and dreadful day of the Lord shall be one of loving kindness, or as President Nelson has recently taught us in Hebrew, chesed, and goodness. Thanks be to God for his tender mercies and saving grace. Okay, next one. This is also Bruce R. McConkie. It's short. This is from the October 1982 General Conference. The Seven Christs is the name of the talk. The second coming of the Son of Man will be a day of vengeance and burning and sorrow for the wicked and ungodly. For those who love the Lord and live his law, it will be a day of peace and triumph and glory and honor, the day when the Lord comes to make up his jewels. See Malachi 3:17. Okay, this is Elder Theodore M. Burton, assistant to the Council of the 12 Apostles. The April 1965 General Conference in Conference Report. Following his great vision of the Father and the Son, an angel came to administer to Joseph and teach him what had to be done to restore the gospel again to the earth before the coming of the great and dreadful day for the wicked, but for the righteous, the glorious day of the Lord. So it's just repeated over and over again. I think this is the last one for now. I'm sure I'll find more in the future because I've heard this all growing up. This is Elder Mitt. Oh my gosh, I don't put that there. Okay, Elder Milton R. Hunter of the 70, the October 1949 General Conference in Conference Report. At the time of the second coming of Jesus Christ to reign upon the earth as the Lord and God, the great and dreadful day of the Lord will take place. It will be a great day for the righteous and a dreadful day for the wicked. All right. So it seems pretty clear. Now we are going to go to Ezra Taft Benson. Oh, by the way, I forgot I had all these up. I'll put the link. Excuse me. I'll put the link for all these in the description box below. That's what I usually do when we're going to the primary source. That way you can access it yourself, verify it, because that's what we do when we research, right? We cite our sources. So that's what I do with the description box. So we have all these. I have Millennial Messiah right here. But for this one, we're going to go directly to the church website for this. This is in the May 1982 New Era. And it's called Prepare Yourself for the Great Day of the Lord. And by the way, we're going to come back to this in a video, in a video pretty soon, like a couple of videos from now, because I found a generational quote on this having to do with the rising generation, and it's similar to a devotional that had the same name, I think, the same name of the talk, but this is rearranged in this article. But anyway, let me go to the part that I wanted to show you. So he says, his coming will, excuse me, his coming will be both glorious and terrible, depending on the spiritual condition of those who remain. So that's what it depends on. It depends on your spiritual condition. That's what's going to determine how you experience this event, both before the millennium, like in the lead up to the second coming, and then at the time of his coming to the world, and after. It's all going to depend on your spiritual condition. Either way. In regards to the lead up to the second coming, he actually quotes Wilford Woodruff in this. So President Wilford Woodruff further prophesied in 1894, quote, "Can you tell me where the people are who will be shielded and protected from these great calamities and judgments which are even now at our door? I'll tell you. The priesthood of God, who honor their priesthood and who are worthy of their blessings, are the only ones who shall have this safety and protection." Let me pause right there. You guys, too many times we act as though our prophets and apostles don't say this, and then we're not told this. Not just them, but in the scriptures too. I'm going to have to probably do a new video just talking about this concept. Let's not be ignorant to the fact or naive that things are going to get worse, but maybe it's not going to be as bad as what you think. And we've already gone through some pretty bad stuff. And just remember, it doesn't all have to happen to you. There are people all throughout the world. It's not just the church. It's not just Utah. It's the entire nation. It's the entire world. There are people right now that are going through really horrible experiences. So we have to also make sure that we're not just like thinking about ourselves and that the entire story revolves around you individually. All right, so I'm continuing. They are the only mortal beings. No other people have a right to be shielded from these judgments. They are at our doors. Not even this people will escape them entirely. So see, not even in our entirety, all of us. Not all of us are going to escape it, but it seems like most of us will be generally protected. So he quotes that. That's Wilford Woodruff quoting from Young Women's Journal, Volume 5, page 512, June 1894. Okay, so now let's look at, let's go back to this. So that was the only quote that I have outside the scriptures for great and terrible, for the phrase great and terrible. Now, I was looking for this in the scriptures as well, and this is what I found. Okay, so like I said, for great and dreadful, yeah, it shows up a number of different places, and probably like 90% of the time, it's referring to Malachi chapter 4, okay? And then there's a couple other instances. Now, with great and terrible, what you'll notice is you have some of it in the Old Testament, but it's never being used in the context of the second coming. It's like It's being used to describe God, like God is great and terrible and things like that. But then you see that it's in the Book of Mormon, starting in 1 Nephi chapter 12, verse 5. And that particular verse is going to become important in just a minute. So you see it in 1 Nephi, 2 Nephi, and then you see it a lot in 3 Nephi, which maybe shouldn't be too surprising because we know that 3 Nephi is essentially a foreshadowing of the second coming and how we might experience things. But you'll notice there's a lot in chapter 8. It's like a bunch of times in chapter 8 that great and terrible shows up. And then after that, you just see it in Ether. In fact, it shows up in the last chapter of Ether as it's describing the downfall of their civilization. You find this phrase, great and terrible. So Old Testament, 1 Nephi, 2 Nephi, 3 Nephi, and then the book of Ether. Now, I wanted to look at 3 Nephi chapter 8 and see what the heck is going on here. Why is this chapter hogging all the great and terribles? And it turns out, I did a search. You see this up here at the top right where you do Control F and then you can search a word or a phrase. I searched great and terrible. Guess how many times it shows up in this chapter? 7 times. 7. And I actually don't think that that's a mistake. So if we go to the first time that it shows up in the Book of Mormon, it's in 1 Nephi 12:5. In fact, I should probably read this from the spreadsheet because I have things highlighted. Okay, so I'm actually going to read verses 4 through 6. And it came to pass that I saw a mist of darkness on the face of the land of promise, and I saw lightnings, and I heard thunderings and earthquakes and all manner of tumultuous noises. And I saw the earth and the rocks that they rent, and I saw mountains tumbling into pieces, and I saw the plains of the earth that they were broken up, and I saw many cities that they were sunk, and I saw many that they were burned with fire, and I saw many that did tumble to the earth because of the quaking thereof. And it came to pass after I saw these things, I saw the vapor of darkness, that it passed from off the earth. That it passed from off the face of the earth, and behold, I saw multitudes who had not fallen because of the great and terrible judgments of the Lord. Okay, so he's talking about 3 Nephi. It's like him having this vision, this prophecy of what happens in 3 Nephi, starting in chapter 8. So because of the great and terrible judgments of the Lord, and I saw the heavens open, and the Lamb of God descending out of heaven, and he came down and showed himself unto them. Okay, so I think what's going on here is that the writer of 3 Nephi chapter 8, excuse me, being well acquainted with the scriptures and well acquainted with Nephi's vision of this event that he's witnessing, I think it really hit him. He's like, oh my gosh, this is it. This is the great and terrible. This is the great and terrible. And he does it 7 times, almost as though to communicate, like, you guys, this was the great and terrible, and it was complete. Like, justice was fully served. I really think that's what's going on here. And it's like an amazing little detail in the Book of Mormon. I don't think that Joseph Smith would have thought to do that. There's like so many things in the Book of Mormon. There's no way that he could have done it. I don't think I could write the Book of Mormon right now. If I tried to do it, if I tried to like just invent a book and produce something like the Book of Mormon with all the little details and stuff like that, it'd be, you guys, I don't care what age. I don't care if like you're 80 years old. It would be a hard thing to do, especially within a short amount of time. But this is like one of those little details that I don't think that he would have come up with this because it's just too much. So let's just read a little bit I'm not going to read all the verses, but let's just read the verses that have great and terrible. But starting with this one, verse 5. And it came to pass in the 30 in the 30 and 4th year, in the 1st month, on the 4th day of the month, there arose a great storm, such an one as never had been known in all the land. And there was also a great and terrible tempest. So this is like how the following starts off with, is the description of great and terrible. That's what leads into the rest of the chapter. And there were terrible thunder, insomuch that it did shake the whole earth, as if it was about to divide asunder. We'll read a little bit more. And there were exceedingly sharp lightnings, such as never had been known in all the land. And the city of Zarahemla did take fire, and the city of Moroni did sink into the depths of the sea, and the inhabitants thereof were drowned. Okay, we're going to skip forward. And there was a great and terrible destruction in the land southward. But behold, there was a more great and terrible destruction in the land northward. For behold, the whole face of the land was changed because of the tempest and the whirlwinds and the thunderings and the lightnings and the exceedingly great quaking of the whole earth. It almost sounds like a chiasmus based on what we just read. I'm not going to look into that right now. Okay, we're going to skip forward. And it came to pass that when the thunderings and the lightnings and the storm and the tempest and the quakings of the earth did cease, for behold, they did last for about the space of 3 hours. And it was said by some that the time was greater. Because there always has to be like this debate about time. And, is April 6th, is that Christ's birthday? Oh, you guys. And all these great and terrible things were done in about the space of 3 hours. And then behold, there was darkness upon the face of the land. All right, skipping forward. And in one place they were heard to cry, saying, "Oh, that we had repented before this great and terrible day. And then would our brethren have been spared, and they would not have been burned in that great city, Zarahemla." And in another place they were heard to cry and mourn, saying, "Oh, that we had repented before this great and terrible day, and had not killed and stoned the prophets and cast them out. Then would our mothers and our fair daughters and our children have been spared, and not have been buried up in that great city, Moroni." And thus were the howlings of the people, and look how it ends. The last words are great and terrible. You guys, please let me know, has anybody else noticed this? Is this in any manual anywhere? I'm not looking for credit, but I am maybe a little bit, because I think this is a really cool thing. The 7 great and terribles of 3rd Nephi chapter 8. I think there is definitely a connection between this and 1 Nephi 12 verse 5. You have the first great and terrible that Nephi himself says and he foresees. And then in 3rd Nephi, that very phrase is used 7 times. And that's how the chapter ends. Great and terrible. So, all right. So that's it for this one. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe. Make sure to subscribe to Anticipating Christ's Return. Again, I'll put the link for her channel in the description box below. Like this video if you liked it. Leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also, make sure to share this, and I'll talk to you guys later.